I was working in this Malay village for a couple of years, I was talking to rich people and poor people, and I noticed that what they said depended on the context in which they said it. If rich people were present, poor people would say certain kinds of things, and rich people would say certain kinds of things. If I had them alone, they'd say different kinds of things. If they were together with other poor people or just together with other rich people. And so I realized in the course of my anthropological fieldwork that I was trying to put myself in different situations because I realized that I got a different story about what was happening, a different narrative from different people. And I did that enough so that I began to think that this was a way of seeing the world, that you couldn't tell what people really thought if you put them in a situation that was saturated with power. Well, let me talk about pre-university education first.
Yeah.
That is, and this is an anarchist point too, but it doesn't need to be. So, I think that education generally, primary and secondary education, it measures only one kind of intelligence, a kind of analytical intelligence, to pass exams of a certain kind. And its net result is that maybe 15% of the students who go, or 15 or 20% if it's a really good school, people like you or me, who do well in this system, we leave this system with a sense of our superiority, how we're smart, a sense of entitlement and privilege that we carry for the rest of our life. For the other 80% of the people who go through this system, who are bright in ways that are not measured by the school system, mechanical intelligence, imaginative intelligence, combinatorial intelligence, aesthetic intelligence, you name it. The schools don't measure this at all. And these people end up with a lifetime sense of defeat, of failure, of being inferior, of not being very bright, which they carry for the rest of their lives. And it seems to me that a school system that ends up, in a sense, diminishing the life chances and self-esteem and so on of people who don't have this single kind of analytical intelligence with the school, that's not a school system worthy of the name. And it's doing more damage than it's doing good. There's a kind of failure of imagination to understand the millions of ways, just like there are millions of ways of being a good writer, there are a million ways of teaching people stuff, and very few of them have to do with classrooms and exams and so on. So I regard the kind of the No Child Left Behind testing, measurement, hard quantitative measures of what school systems are achieving as a step in precisely the wrong direction. The reason, although I'm not a card-carrying anthropologist, the reason I have anthropology envy is that I actually think that the close observation of anything in the world will pay tremendous dividends if you just simply pay absolutely rapt and persistent attention to it. So, you know, E.O. Wilson, as a little boy, was interested in ants, and
yes,
he kept looking at ants and kept following ants, and learned a whole hell of a lot about ants. Well, I think that's true about anything. That for social scientists, most of what we write ought to correspond to some observable phenomenon in people's lives, in students' lives. So I try to convince my students to do field work in this class and to do something, right, that will force them to encounter a world they're not familiar with and to encounter it in a sustained and careful, persistent way. So, for example, this is a student who was not my brightest student, but he was daring. And he decided, this is 2 years ago in this class, to it was a spring course, and during spring vacation he decided he would live with the homeless in Albuquerque. It's a warm place, so it wasn't so bad. And he happened to have broken his leg in intramural sports, and so he could plausibly claim to be an alcoholic who'd broken his leg in a fall.
Right.
And so he lived with the homeless for 2 weeks, essentially. And he wrote, again, not my world's brightest student, but he really did it, paid close attention, and he learned 2 things that I'll never forget. One of them, he spent a week following around someone who lived from dumpsters and sold things from dumpsters, often industrial dumpsters in Albuquerque. And he understood this person had to defend his right to control that dumpster as private property. He also knew when copper was, which was valuable then, was delivered, when fresh food came from pizza joints, and so on. And this guy, by following minutely this guy's trail, what he took, he knew the price series for brass, for copper, for certain kinds of wire. So he realized at the end of the week that this alcoholic homeless man he was with was an urban hunter and gatherer who had the kinds of skills that an Amazonian forager would have about the trees in the jungle of the Amazon. And he came out with a tremendous amount of admiration for the kinds of skills that it takes to make a living this way. I don't know if you remember, this is not Huck Finn, but it's Life on the Mississippi, in which, being a river pilot, Twain says that before he was a river pilot, he learned to appreciate the water just as an aesthetic surface. Right?
Yes, right.
And the beauties of the landscape, the way you'd appreciate a beautiful flower just for its color and shape, and so on. And then after he was a river pilot, every mark on the water meant a shoal,
a danger,
a sandbank,
yes,
a tide, and so on. And that he, by having Zen in the Art of Nautical maintenance point as well, that at that point he had lost, by becoming a skilled navigator, he had lost, in a sense, the aesthetic charm for surfaces that he had as a naive viewer. And I feel